Let me just scooch on over here. Let me close the door. It's very nippy outside. Okay, hello and welcome to an FSX video. We're gonna take a break from the road racing, and we're gonna take to the roads in the skies. This will be just a flight of me flying from, well, let me just start first by saying that I am not a professional in operating any Piper aircraft. I wouldn't consider myself a professional operating any aircraft. I do have experience flying the Cessna. I do have a private pilot's license flying the Cessna 172, the 150, and the 152. I have zero experience flying a Piper aircraft, so what I'll be doing today is I'll basically be applying my Cessna-ish knowledge and applying those procedures along with the checklist in operating this plane today. Second thing I'd like to note is, well, this isn't meant to be a tutorial video or anything of any sort. And this isn't a how-to video. This isn't a review or anything. This is just me. Just decided to do a flight. Well, I'm doing a series of flights, flying from Dublin, Ireland to Toronto Pearson in the Piper Cherokee. Not Cherokee, Comanche, sorry. I've already done the Dublin to Keflavik leg, and today I'm decided to do the Keflavik to Narsarsuaq in Greenland. And there's a rain. Decided to do this leg, and I just figured, hey, why not just record it? So it's not a tutorial video. There are plenty of excellent tutorial videos already on YouTube. So I figured, it doesn't really make any sense to do any more of those videos. That'll be beating a dead horse. What I have noticed, however, in most of the tutorial videos that I've seen is that they show you how to do things, what to do, when to do it, but they don't really tell you why it is done in that particular way. One example is in the Cessna, the A2A Cessna 182 and the 172, in the shutdown checklist, you'll notice that the checklist will instruct you to switch off the avionics master switch, and then you shut down the engine. They don't really say why you have to do it like that. I figure maybe, okay, it's common sense. It could be, but not everybody can probably understand why. And I noticed in a lot of tutorial videos of the Piper Cherokee here that, especially the older videos with the initial release before we had an avionics master switch, they would follow the checklist, but they would shut down the engine. They pull the mixture to cut off, and then once the engine is off, stop spinning, they switch off all the electrical switches and hit the master switch off. When the checklist for the Commanche, and forgive me if I keep saying Cherokee, I mean Commanche. When the checklist for the Commanche specifically states, the initial release version, that is, because we didn't have a avionics master switch, states that you pull the mixture off, and as soon as the engine starts to quit, you switch the master switch off. As I said, I've seen a lot of people do it incorrectly. They pull it off, and then the engine shuts off, and they switch off outside before getting to the master switch. Now the reason why the checklist states that you have to do it that way, you pull the mixture to cut off, and then as soon as the engine starts to shut down, you switch the master switch off, is because we didn't have this switch before, the avionics master switch. And the reason why it told you to do it that way is because it's to protect the avionics equipment. The avionics equipment is very sensitive to electrical surges, and if your alternator isn't operating correctly, when the engine is shutting down, you might get electrical surges which may damage the equipment. So that's why in the Cessna 182 you switch off the avionics master switch. It shuts off all the avionics or radios, so that's already protected, so you can take your sweet time and shut down the engine itself. Whereas this, as soon as the engine starts to quit, you switch off the master switch and that protects the avionics. So in this video, I mean, it's just me just doing my thing. I'm gonna just be doing this flight for fun. I'm gonna try and go through you know, my procedures, and I'll try to explain why certain things are done in that way. I'll try. I can't promise anything, but I'll try. I know there will be errors in how I do things and how I operate aircraft, but you know, keep in mind this is a learning process for everybody. So yeah. So we're on the ground here at Keflavik. We are going to do a almost a 4.5 hour flight to Narsarsuaq in Greenland. We'll be flying IFR obviously, and we'll be cruising at around 14,000 feet. The Cherokee has a ceiling of about, not the Cherokee, the Comanche has a ceiling of about, I think it's about 15 or 16,000 feet, but we'd need oxygen to operate for longer than 30 minutes between 14.5 and what is it? No, we need oxygen to operate between 12,500 and 14,000 feet. Right, so we'll be cruising at 12,000. But we'd need oxygen to operate for more than 30 minutes between 12,500 and 14,000 feet, which we do not have. So we'll be cruising at 12,000 feet. The reason why they give us a 30-minute is because I guess that 30-minute could be used for terrain clearance in case you need to climb higher than 12,000 feet to clear some terrain. So you get that 30-minute window before you have to duck back down into richer oxygen. It is a very crappy morning here in Keflavik, as I guess is usual in this part of the world. It is, and we really shouldn't be operating in this condition, because this aircraft wasn't made to be operated in this condition. The temperature right now is about 5 degrees Celsius. And the dew point is 4 degrees. Now, this aircraft isn't certified to operate in icing conditions, so we're obviously in icing conditions here, because icing conditions would exist under the following. If the temperature is below 10 degrees Celsius and there is visible moisture in the form of precipitation, which we have now, or the visibility is less than 1 mile, if there's fog, then we have icing conditions. Icing conditions also exist when the temperature is 6 degrees Celsius or less and the dew point is within 3 degrees Celsius of the temperature. So the temperature right now is 5 degrees. It is raining. The wind is from the east at 6 knots. We got some broken clouds out there, so we're definitely in icing conditions. We shouldn't be operating, but you know, this is flight sim. I'm kind of in the mood to do this flight, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it anyway. So we're gonna start by removing the bungee cord, which is the control lock. I've already gone ahead and removed the pitot heat cover because I need to check the pitot if the pitot heat is operating, because we'll probably need it. So I'm gonna pull out the checklist here, and it's the upon entering cabin checklist. The pre-flight. Oh, we need to do the pre-flight. So we're gonna bring up the pre-flight inspection window. And if you have any A2A aircraft, you'll be familiar with the walk around. So for pre-flighting the cabin, the control wheel, we remove the bungee cord lock. The master switch, let me just move the... Nah, I don't have to move the yoke. The master switch, that goes on. Fuel quantity gauges. We're showing full tanks in both left and right main, and full in the left and right tip tanks. You're gonna want to take note of the fuel quantity you have here, because I'll show you why. So fuel quantity gauges are checked. Fuel selectors, we put these both on. On the ground for taxi, I like to use the tip tank if there's fuel in there. But for takeoff, we're going to use takeoff and climb. We're going to use the main tanks. So we switch the fuel selector to the tip tanks. The reason we don't use the tip tanks for climb is because, well, you can see here, use auxiliary tanks in level flight only. I'm assuming it's because the tip tanks are gravity fed. And at high angles of attack, you might starve the engine of fuel, which is why they don't advise you using that. So fuel selectors both on. I should have turned on the pitot heat, so we give it time to warm up. So we'll just turn that on right now. Before we switch the master switch off, we're gonna just give the pitot heat some time to get warm. Yeah. The ignition switch is off. The flaps, we're going to extend the flaps. Alright. The pitot heat, I think it's on long enough. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go straight around before I start to walk around. I'm gonna just go straight around to the pitot heat on the left side of the aircraft here and just feel it if it's warm, because if I go through, the pre-flight starts on the left, on the right-hand side of the plane, at the right wing, and moves around. By the time we get around to the left side here, the pitot heat would probably be cold, so we need to make sure that it's working. So we switch the pitot heat off, the master switch goes off, and let's go out there. And we're gonna check the pitot heat, press and hold. It's red, it's working, it's warm. If it wasn't working, it would show blue, and it's cold. Okay, so here we go with the pre-flight. Let me just, I forgot to open the door. But let's step out into the brisk weather of Keflavik. See if we can endure the cold. So we start at the right wing. We check the flaps, we check it for security and condition. So what we do here, we rock the flap, make sure that we get that little movement there. What we're checking for is that the flap doesn't move all the way or move too much, or that it doesn't move at all, which would signify that it's jammed. And we're also going to check the hinges and the actuators. These are the hinges and these are the, well, this is the actuator. We check to make sure that the bolts are in place, all the bolts are in place, and everything looks to be in good order. Next, we check the aileron for proper movement and security. Moves just fine. We check the wing for the upper surface of the wing for any damage or dents. We also check it for ripples, any ripples in the skin, which would signify that the wings were overloaded in flight and they have possibly been damaged. So the wing looks good. We check the aileron linkages. The nuts and bolts are in place. The links are connected. The actuators are fine. So that's good. We move on now to the right wing. We check the wing tip. The tip tank is in good condition and it doesn't appear to be damaged in any way. We check visually for desired fuel level. Now remember when I told you to make note of the fuel tank gauges? I mean, this is not like the Cessna where you get a fuel dipstick so you can measure exactly how much fuel you have. You just kind of, in the Pipers, you have to eyeball it. So if the gauges say full, then the tank should obviously show full. If the gauges show about 3/4 or half, then you should be able to eyeball it and kind of figure out where that is to see if the gauge is accurate. Because in my experiences, it is pretty common for these fuel gauges to be incorrect or malfunction. I remember one aircraft I used to fly, the fuel gauge worked fine if you had full fuel, but once you got down to half a tank, the fuel gauge would just stop at half a tank, and you'd kind of have to figure out based on your flight time and your estimated fuel usage how much fuel you'd have remaining in flight. And once you're on the ground, you'd obviously have to use a dipstick to check it. Anyways, also, we're not only checking the fuel level, but we're also checking to see if there are any particles floating around. I'm not sure if A2A models that, but in the real world, we'll check to make sure there are no particles floating around. And finally, but definitely not least, we check the color of the fuel. We're supposed to use 100 low lead avgas in this aircraft, and 100 low lead avgas is blue. As you can see here, the fuel here is blue. If there was 100 octane, not the low lead one, the regular 100 octane, then that would be green. And I think jet fuel is clear, I think. And I think, what's the other grade? I think it's 80 or 82. I think that has a different color also. So we check for the level, if it agrees with the gauges. Check to see if there are any particles or sediments floating around in there. And we check the color of the fuel. So everything looks good. We're going to drain some fuel and make sure there are no particles or water in the bottom. It's clear here. I've only seen this water in the fuel once in the Cessna 182. I drained it, I saw some water in the bottom here, so I just had to keep draining more until it was all gone. It's very important to drain that because obviously the engine can't burn water, and if water gets in there, you're going to stall the engine and you're going to be in trouble. Alright. Next, we move on to the right landing light. We inspect the casing here that's not cracked or damaged. And normally, well, you can't see it here obviously, but we check the bulb to see if it looks like it's blown. So we're going to assume that it's okay. And since we're here, we just check the leading edge of the wing for any damage and the underside of the wing for any damage. Everything looks good so far. Next, we move down to the wing tie down. Now, I left the wing tie down in place when I took off the pitot heat cover because this is Keflavik, and at this time of year, sometimes it gets a little windy and you don't want the aircraft to blow away. So usually leave the tie downs in place until you get to that wing, and then you just remove them individually. So we disconnect the wing tie down. Then we remove the wheel chocks, and for the main wheel tire we check for proper inflation and the condition. So it looks properly inflated. It looks to be in good condition. There are no flat spots. There are no bumps on the side of it. The treading is still looks good. Has enough treading on it. And we also check for that the strut is properly extended. It's not compressed too much, it's not extended too much. It's about, I don't know what the rough measurement of a normal strut extension on the Piper is, but it looks to be normal. It doesn't look odd or anything. We also check on the pavement for any hydraulic leaks. We don't see any of that, so everything is good. We check to make sure, well, we inspect the brake lines also. There are no crinks or any damage at all to the brake line, and we'd inspect the brake pads also to make sure that they have enough brake pad lining, I think. Yeah. Next, we move on to the right wing, and we do the same thing as the wing tip tank. We visually check for the level, which appears to agree with what our fuel gauge was showing us. Check for any particles in the fuel and the correct color of the fuel. Next, we move on to the nose wheel. We do the same thing as the main tire. Proper inflation. It's in good condition. No hydraulic spills. The treading is good. And we drain the fuel here. We inspect it. We have no water settling in there, so that's good. Next, we move on to the propeller. Now what we do, we inspect it for damage and for security. So what we do in the real world is we just rub our hand on the edges of the propeller to see if we can feel any dings, any dents, any missing pieces that might have get chipped off or anything of the prop. We visually inspect for, just kind of eyeball for any major cracks or anything. And we also give it a gentle tug to make sure it's not loose. It's not rocking or it's not loose or anything. Next, we check the engine cooling air inlets. Now, I kind of used to just skim over this part, but it's very important. If you fly A2A airplanes, you know how important the pre-flight is. I have the 180 and I haven't flown it in a few weeks. I took it out once and was doing the pre-flight, and I saw something kind of caught up in here. When I went into the maintenance hangar, it said that it was an old rag that was left over or something. So that could definitely cause you problems. It could cause you cooling issues. It could block cooling to the engine, cause your engine to overheat. So it's very important that you check that and make sure it's clear of obstructions. And we check the air filter, and that is the air filter, that it is clear from debris, and it looks fine. Next, we move on to the engine oil. We have enough oil. I was trying to find out what the minimum. Oh, the rain is coming down again. Anyways, I was trying to find out what the minimum oil quantity is for a cross-country flight or for extended flight. I couldn't find anything, not even in the pilot's operating handbook. So if anybody knows what it is for the Piper, please let me know. But for right now, the color of the oil is fine. It's not black, which means that the oil is, has too much carbon in it. And the quantity is also fine. For a 4.5 hour flight, I think we're okay with what's that? 8.5-ish quarts. And I think we're fine with that. Next, we do the same thing for the left wing. We check the fuel level, we check for any sediments in there, and we check for the correct color. Next, we remove the wheel chock and the wing tie down. And of course, we check the left main tire also. We check the brake lines, the tire treading is condition. There are no hydraulic leaks or anything on the pavement or on the tire. The brake lining is fine. We can't really see it. I can't see it from this angle, but Next, we check the stall warning. We just wiggle this little thing, make sure that it moves, because when it moves, it should be operating. And we've already checked the pitot heat, so it should have cooled off by now. Yeah, as you can see, by the time we got around to it, it's cooled off. So that's why I wanted to check it right away, just before I started the pre-flight. The left landing light, again, we inspect the casing here for any damages. and that the bulb doesn't appear to be blown. We also go on and we check the underside of the left wing for any damages, and the leading edge also, nothing there. Next we check the wingtip and the nav lights. You know, the glass casing here is fine. We check the fuel again. It seems to agree with the fuel gauge, correct color, and there's no particles in there. We drain it, there's no water in there or any particles or anything, so we move on. Aileron, we check for security and correct movement again. We check the linkages. Nuts and bolts are fine, they're in place, so we can move on. Next we check the flap. It wiggles a little bit, which means that it's not jammed and it's not moving too much, which might indicate that it's damaged. And again we check the linkages. All the nuts and bolts are in place, it seems, and none of the linkages are broken. Next we move on to the fuselage and we check the static port for blockages. Sometimes insects like to go in here and just nestle up in there, and if they get in there, it will definitely cause problems for your static instruments. Next we move on to the tail. Remove the tail. I need to hurry up and get back inside. Remove the tail tie down. Again we check the hinges here for the elevator trim tabs. They're all in place, nothing seems broken, nothing seems out of place. We check the linkages here in the elevator. The nuts and bolts are fine. Yeah, all that is fine. And the linkages are in place. Next we wiggle a trim tab. It doesn't move too much, which means it's not broken, but it moves a little, which shows that it's not jammed. So that works. Next we move on to the fuselage. We lock the cargo door. It is locked. And we just checked also, I forgot to check the left side, but we usually check also the leading edge of the elevator. The rudder for vertical stabilizer for any damages, and just the fuselage here for any damage or anything like that. We also check the upper surface of the wing for any damage or any ripples which would show overloading. And that's it for the pre-flight. Let's hurry up and close the door because it is cold as heck. And what we're gonna do now, I'm gonna lock. So that's it for the pre-flight. In the next video we're gonna go over the startup and the run-up procedures. So yeah, see you then.